Thank you so much for having me, you guys. This is super exciting to be in my hometown of Cincinnati, talking to you guys. That's how I feel inside right now. I really want to thank CreativeMornings Cincinnati for having me here, and Katie and my cousin Lauren Hayes for showing Katie my work, thinking enough of me to show her. So today I'm going to talk to you about my work, my how the heck I got here story, and what I think it means to be game. So really quickly, I just want to show you my reel. This reel's a little bit older, so I have some newer work I'll show you at the end. But this is just to give you, okay, what the heck does this lady do? So I'm going to play that, and hopefully it'll play. Yeah, here we go. Do it. You can do it. Yeah. That's my little show there. So yeah, I'm gonna get into more about what the heck all that was, but just this is sort of like a list of some of my clients, people I've worked for. A lot of the work that I do, I'm a freelancer, but I do work for production companies most of the time. Sometimes directly with clients, but a lot of the work you're going to see today, I did with a company called The Famous Group, and they're based out of Los Angeles. But I have several other production companies and clients. So at the beginning, I did broadcast design, so that's where I worked with Disney Channel and MTV and BET. But the rest, as you can see, my sort of sports-related work is where my career kind of took off. So I'm going to sort of just go through and tell you guys a little bit of my story, but really quickly. So obviously, I think I'm here today to talk about game because of the content of my work. I work in sports. Sports are games. But I think, I did the quintessential reading the definition of game. I feel like every time you do a presentation, it's like, what's the definition? And that's part of it. So I had to do that. And one of the secondary definition, being eager and willing to do something new or challenging. So to be game. I think that's an empowering thought. And it's actually, I think it really relates to my story and how I feel a lot about moving forward and growing. So being game, staying game, learning the game. So it's a great theme. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of my backstory and try and hop through that part. But I was born and raised here in Cincinnati. That's my grandmother on the left on the drums, my grandma Helen. She played in a band called the Dixie Bobbies in the 20s, which I think is really cool. She played in Newport, Cincinnati. They played bar mitzvah parties and weddings and all sorts of things. And so super proud of that. So I have deep roots here. And I was the ball girl for the UC Bearcats when I was 10. Black raspberry chip is the only Grater's ice cream flavor. Don't at me. I have a wonderful family, including my parents, Mendy and Ginny, and my sisters, Brooke and Angie, and a big extended family, and they're taking up half the room right now, which is really cool. But I was brought up to believe by my parents that I could do and be anything. There was no limitations, and that's the greatest gift I think a parent can give a child. So I'm right off the bat, I'm very blessed. Music was a big part of our household. We listened to a lot of vinyl and R&B and soul and Barbra Streisand. I started playing the drums when I was 15, so in high school I played drums and guitar a little bit. And I've lived in Los Angeles for the last 15 years, but I really miss it here. I love Ohio. I wasn't one of those people that was like, I need to leave, you know. I think Cincinnati's great. I actually think like it's cheating kind of to move to LA and be creative. It's because it's such a fertile place for that. So I really think you guys are rad. I'm kind of jealous of creatives in Cincinnati and want to hear more about what you're up to, but thank you guys so much for inviting me back. So a little bit about my childhood. I had a simple dream. I wanted to be the first woman in the NBA. This is my wish list at the top. I wish to meet Michael Jordan. My dad went to conventions a lot, and he brought home a life-size standee of Michael Jordan, and I talked to it every night. Like I prayed to Michael Jordan. That was like, dear Michael, I hope you had a good day. I had a good day. I hope to meet you. Like a prayer, basically. So I was very obsessed with Michael Jordan and sports, and I was a big tomboy, which I know is super shocking. But basketball was a big deal to me. And I think the wish about I wish my mom could get more money, I think was directly related to the Air Jordan 6, which came out in 1991. That's a whole other story. I would have done anything for those shoes. It was a big deal to me. But I think at a young age, I feel lucky to have come up during the Jordan era because it was a lot about style, and I think that spoke to me. And he broke the mold in that sense. There's Chamberlain, there was guys in the 70s that had style, but it was on this, global epic scale. And even as a little person, I was, in tune with that. I was an okay athlete. My dad will be like, "What? You were amazing." I could shoot. I would do the buzzer beater fantasy all the time as a kid, but playing basketball and getting in the mix and I was bad. I was soft. So something else had to work for me. So luckily my dad had this really great little knack, and my favorite thing to do was draw animals and print them out in Dazzle Draw. And this was my first foray. I fell in love with that. I think to me as a little person, drawing and painting, it felt like you had to be good. It had you had to do a really great, painting of a fruit bowl in order to be an artist. So something about computers felt safe to me. I think somewhere in my little brain I knew it was just zeros and ones. It was less permanent somehow. And that was freeing to me. It was permanent, it was important, but it made me feel free. So that was the beginning for me, I think. High school. Nothing super exciting about high school for me, but one thing. I was in a band called Rorschach Test, and we played at Bogart's Battle of the Bands. We got second place, but that was only because it was the same night as the father-daughter dance, and we didn't have the numbers, but I'm not bitter. But we had a photography teacher there named Mr. Gregory. He had a long gray ponytail and wore a lot of turquoise jewelry and played NPR in the dark room, and he loved Uncle Tupelo, and this was the most progressive environment I'd been in. So, he was really different, and he would present artists every week, and one week he presented Dion Arbus. And it was like a lightning bolt for me. I think everybody has this experience with an artist or a movie or music where it's like an old friend or love at first sight. So that was how I felt when he showed me this work. It was speaking to something in me that I hadn't quite put a name to yet, but her work addressing others in society, people that were different. So that it just was like this automatic, like I said, a connection to me. So, and then photography, again, just like my little Apple IIe, it was a device. It was this conduit, an intermediary to make art. And this concept of, oh, you can be an artist and not be this amazing draftsman. I can't draw. And this is, to me, it's still crazy to me that this is my job, and I'm like, oh, stick figures, and I think drawing's a great skill. It doesn't prevent me from doing it, but you don't want to see my drawings. So Dion Arbus was a big deal to me. So then, of course, I was like, oh, I'll be a photographer. And then I went off to college. In college, I studied fine art photography, but a big deal for me was I came out of the closet my freshman year. And this was a huge, obviously for anybody that comes out, it's a huge deal. But it taught me a really valuable lesson that helps me everywhere in my life, especially creatively, which is to stand in your truth and how powerful you feel after that. Nobody can get you when you're being honest. And it was really just magical. And my parents were magical, and I don't want to cry, but that's a big theme for me, standing in your truth. And I wouldn't be able to do any of this. I wouldn't be able to stand up and talk to you if I hadn't gotten past that first hurdle. And it's hard. Maybe I was the most surprised when I came out. I think some people were like, duh, but to me it was a big deal. So that was a very important step, and I'm glad I did it my freshman year. And but then I started learning about a lot of great things at Ohio University. There's a great film teacher there, Ruth Bradley. She runs the Athens Film Festival. She would do this thing where she would play a film all the way through. We'd watch it, and the next day come in and break it down and use a laser pointer and tell you why each part of this film was interesting. And Citizen Kane and seeing the ceiling, that was a big deal to see the ceiling in Citizen Kane. So a lot of great films. I was in a band with my buddy Justin. He was a film director. That was his major, so he taught me how to be a film nerd, kind of. And we played music together, and I took some graphic design courses. I learned Photoshop and Flash. Yeah, my sister Angie was a beta tester for Photoshop, and she's here, so if you want to ask her any question about that. Yeah, thank you, Angie. So we couldn't take, I loved animation, but there was really no way for me to learn animation there. I loved it since I was a kid, obviously, and I watched Nightmare Before Christmas. I was obsessed with Tim Burton, but you couldn't take animation classes if you weren't a broadcast major. So I was in fine arts, so I took graphic design courses, and I learned Flash, and I did really weird stuff in Flash. So I had this wonderful degree. My parents put me through school, thank you very much, and then I decided I don't want to be a photographer. That was like what I learned in college. But I was interested. I was like, oh my God, there's so much I want to learn. I felt like I had just started. So for me, I wanted to keep going to school. And not everybody has to go to school. I think, everybody has their different way of doing things. But for me, I'm like kind of traditional in a way. And I need permission to do things. So school was a way to do that. So I applied to a bunch of grad schools. And CalArts was the only one I wanted to go to, really. I had no inkling I would get in. They have this program called Experiments of Animation, and I was like, they're not gonna let me in. I can't draw. Like that's animation. You gotta you gotta draw. But I was like, screw it. I'm gonna apply anyway. I'm gonna stand in my truth. I'm gonna throw it out there. So I made this weird little DVD with my Flash animations, and I drew a bunny in the DVD menu for some reason, thinking that would hey, I can draw cartoons too, guys. And somehow they decided to let me in, which I can still remember that moment to this day. Tim Burton went to CalArts. He was the reason I knew that school, but a lot of really amazing artists have gone there. So I didn't really think about the fact that I was going to move to Southern California. I just was like, I'm going to CalArts. I could be on freaking Mars. I'm going. So I think sometimes making those intuitive decisions and following your dreams and not totally thinking about the consequences can be a good thing. It's just following your gut, and that's something to hone over time. But when I think back to it, I'm like, holy shit, I didn't think about that. I was going to move away. I love my family. I'm going to miss them. But so I went. And the founder of the program, Jules Engel, he was a guy who really pushed forward this idea of animation as a form of personal expression. He founded the program in the 70s, and he actually passed away a month after I got there. He was 96, I think. So, but he was amazing. I love to think that he looked at my portfolio and somehow decided I was okay to go there. But yeah, and he did a lot of stuff for Disney, Fantasia, Mr. Magoo is one of his backgrounds that he did for Mr. Magoo. But he made very experimental films inspired by dance. So CalArts was an amazing experience. I can't sum it up. I need like 10 more talks, but I was just gonna play this short little film I made while I'm there so you can kind of see like a little bit of a progression. But this is a short little stop motion film that I made. And I need to take a break and breathe. That's Clancy, the bird. He flew up into the ceiling. It's hard to get it back down. I was really into mustaches. I don't know. Thank you. So anyway, after 7 years of higher education, I had 2 degrees, a BFA and MFA. I was finally ready to unleash my creative wizardry into the world, and I got a job at the company. I had an internship. I just walked up to the internship board at CalArts, and I was like, okay, that's good, and then went to Burbank, and they gave me an internship, and they hired me after school. I arrived, they had hired me as a junior designer, and I sat down the first day, and they're like, okay, here's what you're gonna do. We need you to airbrush abs onto this reality star for a main title for a show on E. And I was stoked. I was like, I have a job. I am airbrushing abs and I am working. So it was actually a great moment. I was game. I was ready for a challenge. So luckily, things went up from there though. I worked on network rebrands for Disney Channel, E, MTV. I learned the tools by just doing it, being there. The creative director at New Wave Entertainment at the time, his name was Scott Williams, and he threw me into the fire a lot. For some reason he saw in me, he saw some potential in me. We were in a meeting one day before this shoot for a show called Cory in the House on Disney Channel. So we were doing the main title shoot for that, and he was like, Lauren, you're gonna direct the green screen shoot. And I was like, no, I'm not. And he was like, yeah, you're gonna do it. You're gonna do fine. And it was scary. I'd never been on a real set. I learned to coil cable at CalArts, which is like a big thing if you work in production. But that was it. I'd never been on a real set. So, but I did it, and I did a good job. And I was kind of like green screen girl after that. That's me and Selena Gomez at the Wizards of Waverly Place shoot. So that was cool. So I loved live action. So I really loved animation and graphic design, but I loved live action. As you can see from some of my influences, that was mostly what I was into, photography and film. So bringing those 2 things together for me were really important and fun. So I did a lot of green screen shoots. I became a master of programs like After Effects and Photoshop on the job. It wasn't in school, really, that I learned those things. It was by being thrown into the fire, flames on the side of my face, flames. That was really where I learned those things. So after 4 years, I moved my way up. I became an art director. I think I was like a senior art director by the time I left. But after like 4.5 years, I felt like I needed to do other stuff. In the world of motion graphics, I think broadcast design sometimes feels like it's like a beginning stage or something. It's not true because there's masters of broadcast design, but to me I felt like I need to try other stuff. So I left, and that was a big leap, but that was me standing in my truth. That was me being game for new things, which was terrifying. I was like nauseous when I went to resign. I'm nauseous a lot though. So I got another job at a film distribution company. This was like a pit stop, and I call this my pit stop on the client side of things. So I was a marketing director for this new small independent film distribution company. So they bought films and released them in the US. So they needed trailers and key art, movie posters. So I was the boss of that. I was the client, so I worked with vendors. It was really amazing. I learned a ton. I was kind of a bad client because I was always trying to be the creative director instead of the client. So I'd be like, oh, use this font, and you know, not great, like things. But also, I think we made some really cool work. I worked on, we had a kung fu movie called Detective D and the Mystery of the Phantom Flame. We had The Art of Rap, directed by Ice-T. I got to meet Ice-T, so that was cool. I got to go, I learned a lot here, being a boss, being a client. I went to sound mixing sessions for the trailers, and I was like, turn up the treble a little more, you know, like, because I had to say that stuff. I'd go to the printer when we had key art, I'd be like, oh, let me look at it through the loop. Like, I don't know what I'm looking at, I just need to like, seem like, but you know, I asked a lot of questions though, too. I wasn't afraid to be dumb about something, which I think, again, it's standing in your truth and being game to learn new things. So asking questions and being in that position was great. So that was a really good experience, but I missed making things. Obviously I was a frustrated creative director when I was there, so I was like, I'm gonna be freelance. I left that company after a year and a half, and my big plan for becoming a freelancer was to go on Facebook and announce that I'm a freelance motion designer now, and please hire me. That was my big business plan. So my friend Will, his name's Will Hyde, and he worked at New Wave with me. He was actually an intern at the same time, and he was more on the production side. But he knew me and I knew him, and we worked together. So he knew that I could direct shoots. He knew I could design. So he was like, "You like sports, right?" And I was like, yeah, when I was a kid, but I was like, yeah, totally. I know everything. I know all the stats. What's up? But he was like, oh, we're working on this Cincinnati Reds gig, and you're from Cincinnati, right? I was like, yeah, I love the Reds. So I was very excited to go work for the Famous Group. I knew their work. It was very high end. It was very exciting for me. I went in. And this is a good story because like not every road is a straight road. So I arrived my first day and they said, okay, we have these live action plates that we shot, and we need you to have these billboards form like Voltron, like animate on, and have footage in them. And like it was kind of a complex 3D shot. And I was really not a 3D person. So in motion graphics, there's 2D and there's 3D. There's like Cinema 4D and basically three-dimensional geometry. So I freaked out. I was so excited to be hired there. I sat down. I tried to do it. I sat there and I was like, I can do this. And this other guy, Will Salas, was the other animator, and he could shred. He was like, oh, did his shots in 2 seconds. So I sat there for an hour trying to do it. And then I was like, all right, I have to quit. I can't be a motion graphics designer. My life's over. I called my girlfriend, Alexina, and I was like, I can't do it, I got it. She was like, it's okay. So I came back inside. This is all over the span of an hour. It seems like a lifetime, but. So I went to Nick, my producer, and I was like, Nick, I'm so sorry, but I can't do this shot. I'm really good in After Effects. I'm really good in other things. I'm just okay in Cinema 4D. So if there's nothing else for me to do, you can fire me, no problem. And he's like, no. We got other stuff. Don't worry. And I was like, oh, okay. So they let me work on the Reds Open, and it looked awesome. But just not the fancy 3D stuff. So then after that booking was done, he said, I know you're a really good art director. I know you can direct shoots. I want you to pitch on this Rams job. And I was like, totally. And so there were a couple other art directors there, so I just threw my concept in with theirs. This was a huge moment for me. I'd never made anything that looked like this before. But something about that theme, it was connecting to my inner child. And work was coming out of me that I was like, this looks sweet. How did I even make this? And so I had a concept. I was like, I want to pitch something that's kind of different. So, this sort of techie sort of graphics was getting popular at the time, but I was like, I want to make it kind of gridiron and analog, mix those two kind of looks. So these were the style frames that I made, and I wrote up some copy, and they picked my concept. So, and I think they were a little bit like, oh God, they picked her concept. And we flew out to St. Louis, and Will was like, don't worry, like she's good. So your network, my dad always taught me about your network. So that was somebody I'd worked with and made an impression upon, and it led to something that I would have never imagined. So this is what you should be doing is maintaining your network. But anyway, it went great. I'm going to play that piece for you real quick. And that's it. I don't know what happened. Over. Anyway, I don't know why that quit like that, but let's give it one more try and then we'll move on. And I did most of the animation on this, so this was kind of like a concept to completion thing where I did the style frames, I did the pitch, I directed the shoot, we came back. I worked with an editor, a guy named Pete Leidinger, who's amazing. And I did probably 80% of this animation. That's not the usual thing. Usually there's huge teams, but so that was my first open. Thanks. I'm skipping past a couple of things. We're getting, I think, a little short in time. But so I did a few different opens. I was talking over it, but what I love about this particular job and what I do is that there are different, pipelines for production, and sometimes there's a ton of artists, and you have to really specialize. Like all the way up at like Pixar. There's somebody at Pixar, their specialty is bubbles. That is like their thing, and that's amazing. But I think there was a real reason why I didn't go in that direction, and part of it is because I suck at math. Suck at drawing, suck at math. Not really good Pixar candidate. But what I love about what I do is that you have a lot of control. I guess I'm a control freak a little bit, but not huge teams. But teams. I work. The more we get into this work, I work with amazing artists. And that have taught me so much. So nobody works in a vacuum, but it was cool to have my first foray into this world work so well and happen so naturally. So a lot of these teams, they have a media day, and they just have like a green screen set up, and the guys do this, and then that's it, and then you gotta make something around that. I decided that I really wanted to bring something different to each shoot. Just for something exciting for them to do and think about and distract them a little bit, and something for me too to work with and to make these pieces kind of rise above a little bit. So the next time we did the Rams the next year, we had to do like a sort of a 2.0 version of this. So I was like, oh, let's stick lights in the helmets. I don't know. And then Connor O'Brien, my director of photography I work with a lot, he rigged up some helmets, and that was just kind of our cool thing on set. I did the first time I worked for the Hawks, I was like, let's shoot film and do this sort of like guerrilla, like we're taking over the streets, Hawk's taking over, you know, and do wheat paste. And so we had like 10 extras that we had in like the back of a pickup truck in Atlanta. And we were like driving around guerrilla, like, you know, Connor had like 10 different cameras, and we had, you know, we're like duct taping paper and like brushing it with fake wheat paste brushes, and then we go in and out of these sort of posters. So that's the green screen footage, the very sort of traditional footage, but we brought it out into the world a little bit. So that was that first Hawks Open that I did. Then the Hawks the next year, they said, oh, we bought a bunch of projectors, and we want you to do this cool new court projection thing. So basically the basketball court becomes a screen. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen this stuff before, but one of the tricks in it is that you got to use a lot of 3D. That it's really fun to make things feel like they're falling underneath the court. So it's a lot of 3D. And my thing before this, for the first like 2 years, I was like, I don't like 3D. You know, I was like, I don't do that. So, but they're like, you're doing it. If you want to work for the Hawks, you got to come up with some cool stuff. So it forced me into something that I said I don't do, which should have been my first signal that I was going to do it. So this was a great opportunity to work with other artists and really art direct and be a big girl and communicate, you know, and be a real director, a real art director. So I might not watch the whole thing, but this is the first court projection piece that I did. And we went out and shot extras again. I don't know why I just like to torture Connor, but we had some footage there, some footage of extras running around Atlanta in the heat. And this was great. This was a great experience too, because you know people were cheering. People hadn't really seen this stuff before, and people were getting really, really hyped about it because it was new technology. So we really had to sort of combine those footage moments with the 3D moments. This was a big coup. We got all 5 players, all 5 starters together on set, which is like hard to get. So that was a big deal to get all 5 guys to do my little weird huddle. Anyway, I'll skip past the ending, but you get it. So we did a bunch of these things for the Hawks for like 3 years, and then the first year they like loved this, and they're like, we want 2 court projected opens. So we did that 2 years in a row, and so again it was like, well, what else can we bring to this? What else can we do that's really fun? So I thought we should 3D scan the players. So for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically like taking a 3-dimensional photograph of a person, and then you can take it into a 3D program and use it like a little statuette. If you really want to be fancy, you can rig them and animate them like a puppet, but we didn't do that for this, that was too much. So we did 3D scans of these guys, and I actually called this guy Travis from Scannable, and I was like, I want to rent your scanner. And he was like, whoa, like, do you know how to use it? And I was like, no. He was like, maybe we should, you know, but I didn't know what I was doing, but it scared me, it scared the crap out of me. My boss, Andrew, was like, oh, is this gonna work? And I was like, totally. And I was like, I don't know, you know, like, I didn't know if our computers could handle it. It was like, but I had faith. But Travis was amazing. So he said, why don't we do this? Let's see what your budget is. We'll come out there and scan the guys. We'll clean up the models for you. And they make these, I love this. These are the unwrapped UVs of the player. So it's just so cool. It's like art. Sorry, Paul Millsap. That's Paul Millsap's little face. But that, I mean, the image that you get from the scanner is actually quite messy when it first comes out of the scanner. So thank God he was like, you idiot, you need to have me do this for you, because this is actually a really beautifully cleaned up UV map. So we took those 3D scans and put them underneath the court. I used them for this kind of Han Solo effect for the we call them the headshots, so they're intro graphic, as they call out their name and they come out on the court. So you can see Dwight's 3D scan is pushing underneath the wood there, Han Solo style. So Carbonite. Thank you, Brooke, my Star Wars nerd sister. How did you get more nerdy than me? You were always the cool one. So more recently, again, it's like, what are we gonna do to step it up? You know, more, be game, new challenges. So for the Celtics, the first year I worked with them, we did projection mapping. So we projected onto their bodies and onto the ground. It was really cool, but they were like, okay, now we really need to take it to the limit. So I actually came into the meeting with my coworkers for some pitch ideas, and I was like, the deck just said, fucking drones. I think I used the F word. I might have. Sorry, I said the F word. But sorry, Dad. Sorry, Mom. But the idea was, and then from there, I came up with a concept that was like, okay, the Celtics use these drones as their like smart training. They're the team of the future, and then from there, and again, I was terrified because I was like, oh, we're gonna fly drones around these very, very expensive, very wealthy, but also, you know, they're basketball players, so somebody is very interested in them not being cut by tiny blades. So, but it happened. We did it. They'd never rented a studio space before. Like, they usually most teams have their shoots at a practice space. So this was a big deal for us to do this at a soundstage. And then we rigged. Well, let me just show you, and then we'll talk about it. I have a little behind-the-scenes video. But we rigged a light into one of the drones that was controlled by, there's a pilot for the drone, and then a pilot to point the light, so that's the big Alta 6. And then 2 smaller drones, and we put custom green LED lights on those drones, and those drones were props, but also cameras. We shot footage from those. There was a ton of prep. We had like a flight plan thing that I drew up with little overhead markers, because we had to be super organized. Most of the time on shoots, I'm like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. And I have a sort of a rough shot list, but we had to be really dialed because we obviously have a lot of flying robots going around these guys. And what made it even more fun is that Connor, the director of photography, was on rollerblades the whole time. Connor was a professional rollerblader. The first time he told me that, I was like, ha ha ha, like I thought he was kidding, and he was like, no, really. And then he showed me a video of him like doing a backflip off a roof with rollerblades on. Like, these are the kind of people you meet out there. He's like, and he was fearless. I mean, he would like skate right up to the drone and but that made it. That was something unplanned. But he was like, I brought my blades, and I was like, okay, that'll be extra dangerous, thanks. But it made it feel like our hero footage was also shot from the drone. So he really made that piece. I don't know what this slide is. I think it's the Celtics. So you can watch that at laurenfisher.com. This is so we bring projection to set, like I said. This is from the Celtics Open. This was like very lo-fi. This was like, I mean, they were bigger projectors, but this was the kind of thing I just we made some parquet animations, and I made some really rough mats, and we just pointed them at the guys, and it looked cool. So it doesn't always have to be super high tech, you know, you just try out some things. So that was a fun shoot. This was for the Cowboys. I wasn't even planning on using projection really. This piece wasn't about that, but I was like, I'll just bring my little projector and shine a star on Ezekiel Elliott's face, and hopefully not into his eyes. But these were nice little moments. It wasn't the main part. It wasn't the whole theme, but it was something that added a little texture. Things that you can do in animation's great, computers are great, but doing things mixed in that are practical, especially today, there's so much effects, visual effects. Bring something in camera to what you do, and it resonates. So I like to do that a lot. This is for the Minnesota Timberwolves. This is Boyd Hobbs. He was a cinematographer for the Timberwolves Open, and I was like, this was so cool. This was 2 walls on the floor, and I didn't want to leave set that day because this was so cool. It was like an art installation. And I was like, Boyd, see if you can hold the camera and dribble, and if it looks like, first person, and it didn't work. But God bless him, he tried. It was so cute. So yeah, we did, this is the, I'll play part of this timber wall is open for you guys. Just so you can see a little bit of the actual footage. But they wanted something like super edgy and super, because they have a new look, they had new uniforms and new colors. So there's our little set. Projected eyes onto their eyes, like wolf eyes opening. So this one's a little more avant-garde. But the projections were actually okay. The projections were actually a lot of things I worked on set. You know, we would look at it and I'd be like, I want to tweak that. I could just go in After Effects and change things. I was really fast in After Effects. I am fast in After Effects, and that was that sort of time when I was doing broadcast design, and I wasn't doing all this work that I was like, oh my God, I'm the greatest art director in the world, but that work and all that time I put into that means in those moments I can make those sort of quick decisions. So. I'm going to show you one more. Well, I want to show you guys so much. I'll just show you the Tom versus Time open really quickly, and then I'll get to wrapping it up. But this is a main title I just did. I hadn't done main titles in a really long time, so this is really fun. The director of this show, Tom versus Time, Gautam Chopra, hired me to do this title sequence. They let me split up Tom Brady's beautiful face into little strips. I don't know how they let me do that. But I'm really proud of this piece, so. So yeah, that was the sort of independent piece I did, and then we just finished the Final Four projection. So yeah, some of that stuff's on my site, but quickly, I started, my friend Brock started a magazine about basketball, and I was like, that's so cool, basketball and art and design. It's called Franchise, and he was like, telling me about it. I was like, that's so cool. If you need any help, let me know. I mean, like, if you need an animated GIF for your from your logo. Yeah. He's like, oh yeah, we're gonna interview you. And I was like, oh no. And he's like, do you have any work we can put in it? And I was like, totally. And I totally didn't. The work that I do is not owned by me, but I went home and I was like, I had a couple ideas. I had made this little Michael Jordan thing in Illustrator, this sort of stripped down illustration of Michael Jordan. I just made it for fun. I didn't do it for anything. I just was like, that would be cool to see. So I had that, and I made it in this wallpaper with pink, because pink makes everything great. And then I had an idea to make this basketball in Cinema 4D that has like a floral pattern. I hadn't seen that before. And they made a little poster out of it. And I just started making experiments and posting them on the internet. So again, I was like, why have I not been doing this? I need to just make weird stuff, make things that come into your mind. But again, I needed permission. Brock needed to say, we're going to interview you, and you're screwed if you don't give us something. That kind of like being thrown into the fire. So it's been fun to start doing that stuff too, because I didn't make personal work for years. I'm working on a little short about when I was little and when I got Air Jordans, and I talked to my Michael Jordan. I've never shown this to anybody, by the way. I'm still working on it. Maybe I'll be working on it until I'm like 80, but working on your own personal stuff is not something that you have to do, or you have to, don't feel bad if you're not doing that. But if you do, and put it out there, put yourself out there, I think it really helps. So I love this gift, because I think in a lot of ways it feels like my career a little bit. Because you're like, what is she doing? And then at the end she's like, I meant to do that. Like, she looks back and you're like, oh, okay, that was a little worried for a minute. I meant it. So that, I love this. That's what you look back and like, oh, it makes sense. I was a tomboy. I love basketball, and now I do sports stuff. Like, no, it didn't go that way. But it did. But looking back, that's the easiest place to see it. So tips on how to be and stay game. Stand on your truth. I think, in a way, coming out, that is... it was really freaking hard, but I think everybody has ways to come out to themselves. I mean, not everybody's gay, but I think we all have our things that make us unique, and sometimes it's not always easy to admit it, or to, you feel ashamed. Oh, I'm really into tiny ponies. It's like my passion, all I want to do is take care of them. Don't be afraid to admit that, and maybe somehow that'll relate to the thing you went to college for one day. You never know. And if you're afraid, that's a good sign usually. I was so nauseous on the way here to come talk to you guys. I'm terrified of talking, but you just get up and do it. I mean, the worst thing that can do is you fail. So that gets to the next point. Do it. Don't wait for the right time. Don't wait for the perfect idea, the perfect job. Put one foot in front of the other. I always waited for permission, and sometimes that worked out, but I feel like I wasted time sometimes not just doing stuff. Don't wait. You can do it. Whatever it is, your weird thing, just do it. I believe in you. And then this one's a little more specific for maybe design, but I think maybe you could apply it to what you all do. Be a jack of all trades and a master of some. So I feel that way. I like to learn. I'm not, like I said, I'm not super great at 3D even to this day, but I like it. So I'm sort of a little bit of a jack and a master at other things. Develop creativity that is software agnostic. That was back when I went to CALARTS. I could have gone to a school that was like, oh, we'll teach you Maya, and you will go and work for Pixar. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know anything. So it was learning to be creative and be free that has served me. And I'm not scared. If computers went away tomorrow, I know I could find a way to make art. It would suck, but I would still do it. I would still be super happy about it. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening. I might have gone over my time, and I know you guys have to go back to work, but I'll let the bosses tell us what we do next. But thank you so much.
Thank you. With respect to your time, if you guys have to go back to work, that's great. If you want to stick around for a few questions, we've got a few minutes that we can spare too. So we don't want you to feel like you're obligated. But if you have questions for Lauren, fire them away. Let's go.
Anything.
Can you talk a little bit about being on call, for the championship? Yeah. Working on the fly as opposed to having several weeks to work.
Right. So the question is, can I talk about what it's like to work on the fly and working quickly? Which I don't think I've ever had a job where I had a ton of time. The Final Four and specifically came up at the end of the NBA All-Star game, which is another very crazy job. And my executive producer was like, hey, I think we got the Final Four. We have a month. So a month to do the Open for the Final Four, 2 games, and the championship game. But this was normal. To me, about a month, it feels like our normal production time. Maybe a couple weeks for development and kind of coming up with ideas if it's luxurious. So I don't know a time where it's we have 6 months to do this project. But again, like I said, that's why I like doing this specifically, because it's not like an Apple thing where we did R&D, we went and pet lions and the things that you see these weird things that people do to develop projects that are amazing. This specific job, it requires you to just be really quick. And like I said, I think the reason that I don't think everybody can do that, but I think the reason I was able to is because of all that work I did leading up to being a freelancer and getting this specific position. I'm really fast. And there are some people who are not really fast that are so good. You don't have to be fast to be good. It just depends. Everybody has their place and there's certain skills. And that's been an interesting thing, is working with different freelancers as an art director, learning more quickly what people's talents are and where you can fit them in. Like me, I was an animator that did not fit for a certain shot. I was like, I'm not good at 3D. And so they didn't fire me, they knew where to put me. So that's a big thing. That's a big, long answer. Does that make sense?
Working overnight, though, at the Final Four, though, right?
Oh, yeah. So we worked at the stadium which is not really normal. We do that at the All-Star Game as well for the company Madman Inc. that I work with. We bring computers, and we did this for the Final Four too with the famous group. We brought iMac Pros, which are amazing computers. We brought those into the stadium and had a little office. And at the Final Four, our office was right next to the locker rooms. So the guys were like, oh, yo, yo, like running back and forth, and like we're like being nerds on our computers. But it was great because the client was right next door as well. And we would make a tweak, and we would be like, Carrie, can you come in and look at this? And she'd be like, I like it, great. And then we'd go out into the stadium and test stuff in the middle of the night. That was usually when you had dark time. So Quince Imaging, the projection company, they would have the projectors up, and they would play our opens in an empty stadium, which is the coolest thing ever, is to be in an empty stadium. I mean, it's more fun in a full stadium, but that was cool too. So yeah, that definitely is another unique experience to working in the live space. So it's not for television or a commercial. It's like, I love music. This is like, I'm like a rock star in a really indirect way by doing this stuff, because it's playing for a live audience. So it's a cool little niche. Yes, Aunt Nancy?
What do you have in plans for the future as far as any projects coming up that you can talk about?
I have more. So the NBA stuff is kicking off already. The finals aren't even happened. But so I work, we do opens for the NBA. The NBA is my favorite now. It's the most, they have a lot of fun with their stuff. So there's two teams that I'm working on pitches for. So I'm coming up with like, oh, we had drones last year. Now we're gonna have like drones with freaking laser beams, you know, whatever the idea is. So I'm in that stage for two jobs. I'm working on some concepts for the director of the Tom Brady show. He has a pilot that he's working on. He wants me to take a bigger role in that, and working on some animation for him, which I'm like totally freaked out and excited about. Yeah, there's some other stuff. There's actually a lot. And then I'm trying to still keep, working on my short and just working. I'm working a lot, maybe too much. I don't know, but yeah, a couple. Yeah, she looked back at my wife. Yeah. So, Katie.
What do you do when you're not working to stay inspired and feel like you're still being creative?
What do I do when I'm not working?
Is there ever a time when you're not working?
That's a great question. I actually took a month off after the Final Four because it was like crazy. I was just like, ugh, for like 4 months. And Alexina was like, dude, you better stop working for a minute. So I took a month off. I took up golf recently. It's a weird sport, but there's some great public courses in LA and a lot of like really cute, weird old people. It's a kind of a fun, weird game. So I started playing golf. We have 2 dogs. I hang out with my dogs a lot, and I don't know. I love what I do. So it's actually hard to keep me away from my computer and from making stuff. I'm a little bit addicted to it. But yeah, golf. Yes, Dad.
So I hope this would give everyone some insight when you answer the question. So from the Final Four, when we talked to you after the first night, or what have you, you mentioned something about the shoot went well and you had what you thought you needed and so forth.
Yeah.
But you were upset with the camera or the projection or
Yeah.
camera positions and angles.
Yeah.
And to us, it looked great.
Right.
We couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah.
But
This
I'm
was
wondering if you could share with everybody, what your
story.
thoughts were and what happened and the backstory and the front story of what happened here. I think it could be interesting.
Yeah, this was so when you do projection mapping and those things I was talking about where the court looks like it's sort of falling underneath, the way that you do that without getting too technical is that you have your camera the virtual camera in 3D at a certain angle. So when you render it out, it's from the broadcast camera angle, this predetermined angle, in order for it to look correct, the perspective to look correct. And it's agreed upon. The client from the NCAA, everybody's like, okay, that's even one of the guys from Turner. He was like, yep, I like that angle. We adjusted it. And then this is a great story about production in general too, because this always happens. Is we get there and the guys from CBS are there to shoot it, and the director of the whole telecast looks at this angle and he's like, it's too far away. it's too far away, it's not taking enough of the screen. You can hear them over the comms. Everybody talks to each other over the intercom. And I'm hearing this, I can't talk to him, and I'm in the booth, and I'm like, no. I'm like freaking out, like, because he's gonna change the camera angle, and we've been working for a month, killing ourselves and rendering these things out from this very specific angle, and it's like really nerdy stuff, but it was like killing me. So he's like, bring up the sky cam. So he like brings up the sky cam and is practically like, so this is the broadcast camera. He like takes the sky cam up here because he's doing his job. He's wanting to fill the frame more, and he shot it with a wider angle lens. We shot our 3D stuff with like I don't know, it was like a 50 millimeter. It was a very long lens, and then he's up there with like a 16 millimeter lens. So you imagine like when you see a movie in Letterbox, and then sometimes it's like squished when they play the titles. It was the equivalent of that. So I'm like sitting in the control room looking at my movie squished. And he's like, yep, looks good. That's way better. And I was like, and I lost my cool a little bit. I was going, no. Wrong. It looks wrong. I was like trying to and everybody's looking at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it looks fine. I was like, no, it doesn't. Like, I was like, I actually cried a little bit. And I wrote to my producer who was downstairs on the court. I was up in the control booth, and I was like, wrong. I was texting him. I was like, wrong. And he was like, okay, what do you want me to do? And I was like, I don't know, just tell him it's wrong. And he did. And then you could hear Bob, the director, talking. He's like, what? Well, I don't care. It doesn't look right, And then so I'm like arguing with the director over text. And I did not win. He was like, the next day we rehearsed the day before, and then you rehearse like 10 minutes before the doors open, you rehearse, and he was like, well, all right, projection? Where are you guys? Yeah, is everybody okay up there? The Silicon Valley guys, what are you, he's like making fun of us that we were like, I'm like, we're from LA. Like, so anyway, they shot it with the Skycam, and nobody really cared but me. I was the only person that was really upset about it. And if you watch it, it does look cool like that. It does look cool from the Skycam. It's just not the right angle, and the 3D doesn't look perfect. But we learned something from it, and probably in a couple of years, all the 3D will know where the camera is and adjust for it anyway, so it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's not always roses, Dad. I think I probably called my dad. I was like, it doesn't look right, Daddy. It doesn't right. And he was like, okay, well, what are you going to do? I was like, I don't know. I'm going to cry. But that's anyway, production, that's part of it. Things go wrong. Definitely. Murphy's Law, is that what it is? It does, every time. And you just got to be quick on your feet, and that's always the way it is. Anybody else have any questions? Yes?
If we're okay, we'll wrap it up. But you feel free to come up here, and you guys can talk to Lauren and continue to
Hold me.
Thank you.